Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Change of Heart, which is episode 16 of season 6 of Star Trek DS9. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek as determined by my user polls. The episode to win my latest user poll is Change of Heart. So, Change of Heart is the episode where Worf and Dax are sent on a mission to retrieve a Cardassian intelligence agent who has information for the Federation that could help them in the war. However, on their mission to retrieve the agent, they get attacked by a squadron of Jem'Hadar soldiers, and Jadzia gets critically wounded. So Worf is left with a chance to either abandon the mission or complete the mission, but at the cost of Jadzia's life. He at first decides to complete the mission, but doesn't get very far until he realizes that he can't let his wife die, so he goes back to save Jadzia's life, but they find out that the Cardassian spy was killed as a result, which may result in the death of millions, as he had information that could have saved lives. Worf is just reprimanded but not punished severely for this because they want to keep this mission hidden, but Worf expressed no regrets about saving Jadzia's life. So I think this is a really great underrated episode. I think this is the best Worf and Dax episode. In fact, the only reason I think as highly of their relationship as I do is because of this episode. I like the Worf and Dax relationships. I like the way it began when they first hooked up back at the start of season 5. I thought it made sense for the characters because they had chemistry together. But once they were together, I wasn't as interested in their relationship. It did just seem kind of there. And even their wedding episode was kind of like, yeah, I get it, they're together. But it wasn't until this episode that I was completely and totally sold on the relationship. In fact, I would go as far to say that this is the best, one of the best romance episodes in the entire Star Trek franchise, as I did put this in my top 10 favorite romance episodes. I think this was number 4, actually, if I remember that correctly. So I did really think this worked out very well. Now, why did this work out so well? Because the whole way the episode was structured, I thought was an amazing character piece, and it was done so well to just relate how much these characters care about each other. And I love that they actually used the backdrop of the Dominion War, because this was Deep Space Nine's 6th season when the Dominion War was going. So every time there's an episode that kind of ignores the Dominion War and pretend it didn't exist, I get kind of annoyed. And there was other viewers who got kind of annoyed, being like, hey, isn't there a war going on? But this episode said, let's make a romance episode with Worf and Dax, but they used the backdrop of the Dominion War to further that. But the heart of it, like what it was about, was the relationship between Worf and Dax, and I think the way they pulled off was absolutely marvelous. So the episode begins with a lot of banter between. I read a user review recently where one of the users described this as boring character stuff, which I completely disagree. I actually think it was perfectly structured, because at first it gets you into the type of relationship they have. They have them show them in the quarters with they're having intimate moments, and then they show them once they actually go on the mission. They show the banter between them about how they want to go on the honeymoon, and Jadzia wants room service, and Worf wants to suffer, but he eventually lets Jadzia have her way since he got to plan the wedding. So it was actually it showed the kind of relationship, the healthy, really good relationship that they had, which I actually think was essential building blocks, and actually quite brilliant the way it plays into when the plot really kicks in. So the plot really kicks, and throughout the whole thing, though, there was this montage or theme, I should say, of Worf trying to lighten up and have a sense of humor because of Dax. Because Worf is a character in Star Trek, since Next Generation is infamous for being stone-faced, not funny, not humorous. He's even called out on this by some other characters, because other Klingons have been known to laugh and be humorous, where Worf is always deadpan and serious. So I love that they showcase that Jadzia is bringing out this humorous side of him that no one else could. And again, that adds to the richness of the relationship. So the theme throughout, even after Jadzia was injured, was about Dax trying to lighten Worf up. Of course, like they were sort of joking around or whatever when they got attacked by the Jem'Hadar. So Worf immediately goes back into serious mode and he starts to regret ever being lighthearted because he thinks it's what led him to caught him off guard. And of course, this doesn't sit well with Jadzia, but to see the way they handle this and the way that eventually, because Jadzia is still trying to crack jokes because it's already been established in her character in the past that is how she copes. That is her coping mechanism. That's how she deals with things and stress. In this situation, she's basically mortally wounded and about to die, so she cracks a lot of jokes to sort of deal with that stress. And eventually, like, I think Worf catches on to this because Worf does tell her at one point that, you know, as soon as we get out of here safely and alive, I will smile all you want. And I actually thought that was a really great line. That was a really great moment. But the plot really kicks in with the dilemma that comes in. And this is a really great moral dilemma in terms of Star Trek. And I thought, again, the way they showcased the type of relationship that they have and how important they are to each other first. And then they present this dilemma. I think it was absolutely brilliant. So the dilemma, of course, is that Jadzia is shot and she could die. And at first they try to make it to retrieve the operative, but then they find out that she just can't do it. She just can't move anymore. And Worf realizes that the only way to save her life is to immediately take her back to the runabout. And that if he continues onward towards to get the Cardassian spy, which is still a ways away, there's still a journey away. Like I read this one review, this guy really didn't get it. He thought, oh, there's a huge flaw because this is the two-way trip. Worf could have just went and got the spy and then came back and then got Jadzia. But the whole point is that she would be dead by the time he got back because it was too far of a journey. Because it's kind of hard to tell when you watch the episode because the passage of time isn't done perfectly. But they did mention and they did sort of imply that he's still like a day or two walk away. Or not a day, but a couple hours walk away. Maybe it was a day. I don't know, but it was a long time walk away in order to get the spy. So by the time he got back to her, she would have died before they got back to the runabout. So they made that clear. So that other guy didn't know what he's talking about. So the dilemma was clear. Worf either could complete the mission, which could potentially save millions of lives, or he could, but by doing so, he lets his wife die. So the other option is to save her life, but in which case, millions more could die. And it's a great dilemma. So at first, Worf's reaction, and this is within his character, is to duty first. He has to complete his mission. So he goes, and to see the scene where they parts, and he knows, they basically both know that he's leaving her to die, but she's made her peace with it because she even says herself that she's a Starfleet officer, so she understands herself his decision, and that he understands. And they kiss, and again, this is another very touching, very emotionally moment that was really super well played. But then, like, we get another amazing scene where Worf is actually traveling to get the guy, and they play up like the sound of the heartbeat, and they show, like, Michael Dorn does an amazing job in this scene where he's doesn't know, he could tell that he's having doubts and that he can't live with himself by doing this, and eventually he just goes, fuck it, throws his sword into the forest and just goes back and saves her life. That was such a very powerful, effective scene. It was amazing, one of the best, in Trek, in my opinion. And then so he takes her back to the station where Cisco informs him that the Cardassian spy had died, and because of that, the Federation won't have this information, vital information, that could have helped them win the war, or at least save a lot of lives. And he said, Cisco said it was my duty to tell you you made the wrong decision. But then when Worf left, he explained himself that he was thinking back to his wedding vows and how the Klingon love, or the love between two Klingons, or Klingon love, whatever the mythology was, is that nothing can stand against that, and he didn't really understood what that meant until then. And again, that was an amazingly powerful moment. And then another thing I absolutely love is that after Worf goes to leave, after Cisco sort of reprimanded him and punished him or whatever, he says, Mr. Worf, I have to let you know that as a father, I would have made, or as someone who had a wife, I would have made the same decision. If it was Jennifer in the clearing, I wouldn't have left her there either. Which is, again, I love, this is a great callback, because we know in Cisco's journey that he did have to watch his wife die. We saw in the pilot episode that she was pretty much already dead, and he couldn't do anything to save her, and he was physically dragged away. Like, he would have died. He would have stayed there on that ship and died with her if it wasn't for the other officer who dragged him away. So we do know, and this is such a great callback, and it makes so much sense, even though, like, Cisco, again, his duty was to reprimand Worf and say, oh, you made the wrong decision, blah, blah, but that was just his duty. He took off his captain hat and put on his, personal hat, and was like, I would have done the same thing. And you get the sense that he totally would, and that if, like, he could have saved Jennifer, and he would have, even if it meant like letting the Borg defeat the Federation, or letting, going against his duty, he would have saved Jennifer. And so he totally understood Worf's decision. And then, of course, the interaction between Worf and Jadzia, when she realizes that he scrubbed the mission in order to save her life, again, was absolutely perfect. It was one of the most heartbreaking, most touching romance moments in the entire Star Trek franchise. I must admit, when I watched this episode last night, in preparation for this video, I had tears streaking down my eyes. I will admit it. Like, this whole, not just this scene, but like pretty much the whole last 10 minutes of this episode, like, it was pouring down with tears, because this was such an effective, great, it was just done so well. It was one of the best romance stories ever. And the other thing is, that I like about this episode, is that it shows, remember how I said it incorporates the Dominion War? It shows, like, the intelligence side of things, which I like, because we didn't really get this, because, in real life, there are always defectors, there are always spies who are working from the other side, who, for whatever reason, want to help them. And so it totally makes sense that there would be a Cardassian who feels that way. And of course, this is explored a lot more towards the end of the series. But it totally makes sense that there'd be a Cardassian who is willing to help out the Federation. But I love the way his demeanor, the way he's portrayed, because he's not portrayed as a nice guy. He doesn't like the Federation. He's prejudiced against Klingons. He's pretty much racist against Klingons. And you can tell he sort of looks down on all Federation species. But he's not doing it to help the Federation. He's doing it because he doesn't like Dominion ruling over Cardassia, so he's doing it for his own purposes, but they ally with Starfleets, and that is the kind of realistic dynamic that exists in wartime, and especially in intelligence operations. And so it was great to see Deep Space Nine actually explore that aspect. It made the whole war a lot more realistic, a lot more tangible. And plus, like, this kind of brings in to the dilemma, is that Worf could leave his wife to die in order to save this asshole guy who's racist towards him, and only helping out the Federation because, for his own selfish purpose that has nothing to do with him. So I'm sure that actually plays into it a bit. But if you think about it, the information that he had could possibly have saved millions. It doesn't matter how big of an asshole he is. Like, Worf basically, by saving his wife, it's not just he let this one asshole Cardassian die, it's that all the information that could have saved lives died with them. And I just thought the way this played out was amazing. I would say this is one of the most underrated Deep Space Nine episodes. I would say this is one of the best episodes, but it's not top 10, maybe not even top 20. Might be top 20, I have to look at it, material. And that's because it would be top 10 material for me. It would be like top 5, actually, if it wasn't for the fact that there's a side plot. So, unfortunately, there is a side plot in this episode, and I think it severely holds this episode back. Typically, I'm not a fan of the A plot, B plot storyline, but sometimes that can be done correctly. Unfortunately, in this case, the B plot is really bad, and I actually think brings down the episode a bit. So, let me get into the B plot, which I haven't talked about. So, the B plot, and it actually ends like almost halfway through the episode, and the end of the episode focuses on the Worf Dax thing, which frankly I just think they should have padded that storyline in order to get rid of the B plot, or at least come up with a better B plot. So, the B plot was with O'Brien wanting to defeat Quark, because Quark's on a winning streak on Tango, I think it's called. Yeah, the Ferengi game is basically, I don't know what it's like, but it's kind of like poker, but looks a bit like roulette, but I don't know. Anyway, he's on a winning streak, and O'Brien's like, oh, nobody can beat him, and so O'Brien gets in his head that he wants to beat him, so he practices Tango with Bashir, and O'Brien apparently sucks because he never played the game in his life, but Bashir, because he's genetically enhanced, is able to pick it up very fast. So then he says, oh, why don't you go against Quark? So then Bashir goes up against Quark, and he's doing really good, but then Quark distracts him by telling him about lost love, about how he lost Jadzia, and how they both sort of lost Jadzia, and how depressed they are that she ended up with Commander Boring, as they put it. And this kind of becomes an ongoing storyline from this point. As mentioned a couple of times of how you see Quark and Bashir sort of pining over, oh, we could have had Jadzia. First of all, Quark never had a chance of having Jadzia. This is ridiculous for him to think so. And Bashir's it was shown as like an infatuation that was just going on during the first season that he kind of let go of. I think the callback here that he was deeply in love with her, I don't buy that much, but that's not why this subplot sucks. The reason why the subplot sucks is because the whole thing of O'Brien wanting to defeat Quark, and then Quark distracting Bashir with talking about Dax was a bit obvious. It was really cliche. It was very two-dimensional. It's not very well done. It was so, let's distract you. I mean, it's beyond obvious what Quark was doing, and I think it's poor writing to suggest that tactic even worked, and just the whole thing of we had to beat this unbeatable Tango play, it really detracts from the main story, and especially since I think maybe they did this on purpose because they wanted to tie it into Jadzia, so they had the Bashir side of Jadzia and the relationship she has with Worf, but I think it actually detracts rather than adds to their relationship. If anything, to say, there's this other guy who's jealous, that doesn't really have to do with the main storyline, which is their relationship and how he would be willing to risk millions of lives in order to save her. So, unfortunately, I do have to say that side plot is really bad, and so it does bring the episode down a bit, and that's why. Otherwise, I would say this is in the top 5 best Deep Space Nine episodes, but because of that subplot, I had to take that into account. So, my rating for Change of Heart out of 10 is a 9. As I said, this would have been a 10. This would have easily been a 10 if it wasn't for that subplot. But because of that subplot, and because that subplot is so bad, I have to take it down to a 9. But it is still an amazing episode. That Worf Dax storyline was just executed so well. It was one of the most heartfelt, romantic stories, and the moral dilemma just added to the texture to it, made it really emotional, really impactful. I think it's one of the best romance stories, not just in Star Trek, but in all of fiction. So that is it for my review of Change of Hearts, and now let me decide which episodes will be the options for the user poll, which you can vote in. So let me go to the random website so I can check out our options. Okay, so let's choose our options. We'll start with the original series. Our option is going to be The Enemy Within, Season 1, Episode 6. This is the great one where he goes, I'm Captain Kirk! Transporter malfunctions, split Captain Kirk into two halves, one meek and indecisive, the other violent and ill-tempered, blah blah blah. So if you want me to review, it's a fairly decent episode, a bit campy, but hey, it's the original series. So I can review that if you like. Next generation option is going to be Time's Arrow. It says Time's Arrow Part 2, but I'll do both parts, covering all in one. Captain Picard and the crew follow Data back to the 1800s to get him back, only to be suspected alien visitors killing people at that time. This is kind of a failed two-parter. Like, it was set up kind of... It was mainly the second part that let it down. Like, the setup for the first part was kind of good. I don't know. This is like... It would be interesting to talk about this episode because it's an instant where the writers were kind of forced by the producers to make a cliffhanger to end the season on. And I don't think they were really up to their hearts weren't in it, I don't think. I mean, this could have been more interesting, but it's kind of... I don't know. Anyway... Let's move on to the DS9 option, which is To the Death, and I've already done a review for that. You can check it out on my channel by doing a search. So I'm going to choose another option. DS9, Shakar. Okay, I haven't done this one. News arrives that Kai Wen has become Bajor's political leader. She asks Kira to negotiate with an old resistance friend about returning soil recommenders. This is a pretty interesting Bajor episode. I wouldn't say it's an amazing episode or anything like that, but it's fairly decent and helps push forward the Bajor storyline. So, yeah, I could review that if you like. Then we go into Voyager. The Voyager option is Basics, and I'll say instead of part one, I'll do both parts again. So this is a really interesting two-parter that I'd love to talk. I talked a little bit about it when I did my Voyager videos, but I'd love to talk more about Basics and how this is another case. Almost all these cliffhanger things of part two does not live up to part one, and this is definitely the case with this one. And part two becomes a victim of season 3 overall. As if you know anything about my reviews, I didn't like season 3 Voyager, so I'd be interesting to talk about this as well. So this is the episode where the Kazon take over Voyager and strand them on a planet. It's kind of the spoiler for the first part, but there it is. Okay, let's move on to Enterprise. We'll do the random number generator. Comes up with season 3, which I believe has 24 episodes, I want to say. And, okay, so season 3, episode 4. What is that going to be? Season 3, episode 4 is Rajin, if that's how you pronounce it. Enterprise helps an alien woman, Rajin, seeking to escape her life as a sex slave. Once on board, she uses her alien abilities to gather bombardic data that the humans are captured by her employers, the Zindi. This episode sucked. I talk about how much I love season 3 of Enterprise, but there were some bad episodes, and it's particularly towards the start of the season. They were mostly like spinning their wheels because they were telling one extended storyline, and this one just wasn't any good. But that's your Enterprise option. You can select that if you like. So those are your options. You can vote in the poll by going into the link in the description below. That will take you to the straw poll website where you can vote in the poll for which episode you want me to review next. I will be back in about 2 weeks, I believe, to review the winner. So make sure you subscribe to keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.